Hello, everyone, and welcome to the From Fear to Fearless show. I have missed you for the past 2 weeks. I had to take a break, but here we are back on again. So, as usual, this show will be all about sharing stories of ordinary people who have done and continue to do extraordinary things despite their fear. Fear is normal part of growth and change, but for many of us, especially for children, fear becomes a factor and they have hard time pushing past their fears. So the mission of this show is to share stories. So today I have a special guest. We're not only going to talk about fear, but we're also going to talk about what's on everyone's mind, AI, and how it's affecting all of us. And she is no other than Eddie. You have to help me with your last name. Is it Reether?
It's Raether, and my first name is Edie.
Edie.
Yep,
Edie Raether
yep.
is here today with me. It's her second time on this show. Thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm taking off for Florida on Friday to meet with my speaker friends, so it's a little hectic, but why be bored, right, Kohila? Why be
Yeah,
bored?
absolutely. Absolutely. I wanted to share you some of your background. You're a brain trainer and you actually are two times TEDx speaker.
Yep.
Yeah, beautiful. And you have helped over 3,000 professional associates and Fortune 500 companies in 5 continents. Tell me a little bit about that experience.
Well, I like traveling, but it's better if it's on somebody else's dime. And I'm really excited. My last one was in Singapore for the HR conference, but I may be speaking in Dubai, and that has been high on my list. So I'm very excited, but it's a good way to learn about other cultures. So I still have Australia, and I don't know if I care to go to Antarctica. So
Mhm.
um, if you guys have a conference coming up, let me know.
Awesome, awesome. And you specialize in human potential, behavior psychology, motivation. So you were working directly with clients, is that true? Before?
Yeah, in fact, I just saw a client now for hypnosis for smoking. So I still do hypnosis, neuroplasticity, brain training, whether it's a bad habit like drugs or smoking, alcohol, whatever, weight, or whether it's anxiety or depression. So I do still see people by Zoom as well. But
Okay.
you know what? Since we've talked, Kahila, I have gotten so passionate about my last TEDx talk, and I can send you, I think I did send you a link.
Yeah.
That one will die soon because when TED officially posts it to the TED program, then that link will die. But I really want all of your listeners to watch it. I'm in my 80th year of life, and I am so committed for the next 20 years. I plan to go strong till about 100.
Nice. Love it.
And that is, the talk is AI and digital dopamine making us dumb. I'm
Love it.
going to admit, I think the reason TED still hasn't posted mine, they posted others, is because they're fact checking the heck out of me. And I understand
Mm.
it because I'm going to tell you, I learned so much that I didn't want to know or hear or see by putting this talk together. So
Wow.
I'm glad we're here today because um, we are at a tipping point in humanity. And I take it very, very seriously. So since we've talked, I'm actually kind of rebranding, still doing a lot with, as a change strategist. But I got the domain, the other AI, and I kind of look at myself as the AI alternative. And it's not to slam them AI. I mean, what chance would I have surviving that? But to realize my closing words in my TED talk are that we need to focus less
Mm.
on making AI better and more on AI making us better to
Beautiful.
serve humanity well. And
Mm.
that's my mission in a nutshell. Because,
Amazing.
one of the things I even talk about, where's my cell phone? Fortunately, it's over there. But, we give our cell phones to our kids as a babysitter. I'm going to tell you, and this is the stuff I'm sure Ted is checking out because it's shocking them as well. But if you take a brain scan of somebody that just took a hit of cocaine, and you take a brain scan of somebody, a kid, your toddler that is hooked on the cell phone,
Same.
and they're getting a dopamine, fix, and it's an addiction. The brain scans look almost identical. Is this scary
Wow.
or what? So
It
you're
is.
handing these cell phones out to your kids, and you're basically introducing them to a drug addiction.
Mm-hmm.
You agree? It is. It's
No.
a fact. I didn't know how bad it was. So I hope everybody joins me because I'm on a mission to save our brain. And think about it, Kohila. We wouldn't even have AI. We wouldn't have technology if it weren't for the creative mind. And we're
Mm-hmm.
destroying it because there's a shortcut going on in the brain. And it's leaving out the neocortex where our higher thinking, our wise mind is, where we make, analytical, critical thinking, creative thinking. So we read in the paper, you watch on TV where, I mean, if somebody puts the wrong stuff on your pizza, they get out a gun and shoot them. This is crazy stuff because people are, it's fight, flight. It's the emotional brain that has just taken over.
Mm-hmm.
And and I'm going to tell you, I mean, even Hawkins said, and I start my TED talk with that AI will be the best thing that ever happened. It'll be the worst thing that ever happened. And Hawkins said, Stephen Hawkins, he's dead now, but one of the brightest minds that ever lived. It'll be the best thing that happened, the worst thing that happened, or it may be the last thing that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So my mission is to make sure that um, we move forward and not let it destroy humanity, because there are many scientists that believe it can. And let me tell you this too. This is what else is very scary to me, that a lot of the top execs at Google, the people who create it, including people who invested like Elon Musk, are
Yep.
saying, oh, wait a minute,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we shouldn't be doing this. And I'm getting goosebumps. And I talk about it all the time, and I still get goosebumps.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to prepare, because we certainly see the abuse with scammers and so forth, but
Yep.
it's way beyond that, because many people smarter than you and I do believe it could destroy humanity. So
Yes.
how's that for a happy introduction?
Also, cheers. I love it. I watched your TEDx talk. You send me the link. It's amazing. So tell me, what can a parent do? I'm busy. A lot of the parents are going to be like, I'm busy. This is the world we live in. I have to give them a phone. I have to give them an iPad. What do we do?
I think as parents being parents, I'm going to be honest. I just felt as a parent, I was much more engaged than I see a lot of parents today. And it's almost like they want to be their kid's friend rather than, wait a minute, you may have to be their disciplinarian. You need to be their coach. You need to be their teacher. Are you teaching them things? And
Mm-hmm.
you have to be more engaged today. My kids are in their 50s. It was easier to just let them run, because they would be outside playing ollie ollie over, let whatever Red Rover come over, whatever. But now kids are just sticking with their little, and they're not. And so we often say that AI, and I'm not against AI. It's a great tool, but we have to be in charge. We have to be the maestro and control it. So parents really have to take more control than before. I did not have to be, looking over my kid's shoulder all the time. And I didn't. I was pretty laissez-faire. But this was back in the 60s, the 70s. You honestly could be. And now I think you got to be aware. You got to know what they're thinking. You got to be communicating with them. I mean, let's face it. And you saw my TED Talk. Do you really think this is a coincidence that since screen time has gone up, and so many kids admit to even more than 7 hours a day beyond schoolwork,
Mm-hmm.
that there's an increase in suicide, in depression, in anxiety, in obesity, in, you know what I mean? And I am sick and tired, Kohila, of everybody saying, oh, and did you hear that part about IQ scores?
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea IQ scores had dropped that much. This is in the United States. In the United States, what did I say? It was 14.7 or 13.7. I think it was 13.7. So about 14 points. That was still 2000. They're saying it's dropping faster now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing we have dropped more than 15 points in IQ scores. So when I was growing up, we were a lot smarter than kids today because we weren't addicted to this. You know what I mean? Now
Yes.
listen, Kohila, and I should shut up and let you talk. But
No, no, keep
I'm
going. I
so
like it.
animated about this. I'm scared. So you talk about fear. This is what I'm fearful about. If we drop, listen to this, if we drop another 15 points, we are marginal intelligence, and a democracy cannot
Mm,
be supported by stupidity. And
mm,
and I'm, I love my Asian friends. I'll be honest, my son, when he lived in the DC area, he always chose areas where a lot of the Asians were because the standards were higher.
mm.
They were higher. The students, you know what I mean? The average.
Yeah.
And it is true. The countries that are over 100 now, we're down. What is it down to? About 97. If we take another dip, we're down to about 83. That's low. And the countries that are above 100 are basically, and a couple of them are communistic countries. It's China, it's Hong Kong,
Mm.
Singapore is up there, Taiwan's up there. And so um, I think it's a much bigger issue than just
Just
being,
on the phone.
yeah. So anyway, I'll shut up and you can ask some questions, but you can tell that I'm pretty passionate
Oh,
about it.
yes, I can see it. I can hear it. I can feel it. It's important though, because education is so important for parents, right? Because parents sometimes, choose the easy way to give the child the phone. So let's talk about a younger age first. So let's say there's a young mom who started giving the phone or the iPad to their child for, to babysit them for a bit while they did other stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, Now that they hear you and they feel like, okay, I need to make changes, how can they make changes? And what if the child is now angry or mad because obviously they experience this addiction a little bit, right? Let's talk about someone young being addicted.
Well, you know what, Kahila, you are so right. One of the most, I mean, I've done addictions, treated them for almost 60 years. And this is a few years ago. This is years ago before it got this bad. Somebody brought in their son, 7, 8 years old, maybe. He apparently was so addicted. If he was so mesmerized when I think he was playing games with his, video games and stuff like that. If his parents walked by, he went into a rage. I mean,
Mm,
the addictions are such that the anger, the irritation, and there again, we're coming from the limbic brain and not the neocortex. But what was I going to say? If kid, and I have people that brag about how smart their 2-year-old is on the computer, and you know what I mean. And that's scary to me. You should be bragging about them getting on the baseball field and hitting a ball or something like that, or playing an instrument, or the things that I think were more prominent when I was growing up. But we have to realize that, and people do it a lot when they're driving. They keep their kids quiet. I get
mm,
that, but we didn't have them when I was growing up. And drive time would be, we would sing songs a lot. I remember
mhm.
that. You are my sunshine, my only son. I don't care what you sing,
Yes.
but it was family bonding time. And I remember when we would drive to the cottage. I used to live in Wisconsin then, and I remember, when my kids were 2 years old, I would just say, "What's that? Cow. What does a cow say? Moo." So I was teaching them, and drive time wasn't family engagement time. There were no distractions. It was
Mm,
great. Now it's just hand them the phone, and it teaches children to be in a silo where there's no communication and so forth.
mm,
But, and I don't have the chart right in front of me, but from what I recall, I think it was 0 to 2, absolutely zero screen time, nothing, nothing.
mm,
And then I think it was 2 to 4, and I can send you this information. I think then it was only if it's like FaceTime with grandma and grandpa out in
mm,
California or something like that.
mhm,
And so even at 5 and 6, we're talking very limited time, 1 or 2 hours. There's 5, 6, 7 year olds that are doing more than an hour, that's for sure. So it should be very limited. But the other thing is, Kohila, it should be supervised. I mean, we talk about human trafficking and so forth. There's a gal right down the road here. How old was she? I don't know, 11, 12, 13. She's been missing like 6 months.
Mm.
And they think the parents sold her to human
Mm.
traffickers. You know what I mean? So we have to be careful, because with the internet, when you and I, well, you're younger than I am by a lot, but yeah, as a parent, we had much more control. There
Mm.
weren't all these interferences. So,
Kids can access way more, right? Kids,
yeah,
it's all accessible for them. So in
yeah,
some
it is. And so I think parents, we have to realize, maybe it's a matter of having less kids. Now, I had friends who their parents had 21, 22 kids. It was a farm area. People had kids to help out on the farm. It was like cheap labor. But I think being a parent today is so much more challenging that we probably need to look at birth control or something, because we need to be more invested. Yeah. And we
Mhm.
have to be more in charge and more in control. But you know what else? I think I don't see parents teaching as much. I think I told you I have Airbnb apartments here.
Mhm.
Honest to God, Kohila, I am seeing the change by the day. And I am seeing people with degrees, master's, doctorate degrees, and they do dumb stuff. We have lost, if common sense were so common, we'd see more of it. And I think
Mm.
we just don't have parents that teach us. You
Mm.
don't put a wet towel on nice wood furniture, just little stuff like that.
Mm.
And and
Skills, right? Life skills.
life
Life
skills. I
skills.
don't think parents are taking the time. And you know what else? Because I see it and it scares me. I mean, I cannot believe what I see happening with the prominence of stupidity, but with people with degrees. But you know what else I think? When I was growing up, we had things like 4-H, and even if we didn't have 4-H, our parents would bake with us. And I was just thinking the other day how much there's a lot of skills in baking. One, you learn to look through the whole thing first. You make sure you have all the ingredients, because you don't want to be in the middle of it and know that you don't have any eggs, and then you got a mess and you got to take a half hour and run into town. You don't have time and whatever. And then you look at preheating the oven. So it taught you to think through things. It was like a problem solving, creative
Mm.
problem solving, really. And we don't do that anymore. We just push a button and throw it in the microwave.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
absolutely. Tell
yeah,
me a little bit more about this when you say the digital dopamine hit. So, how does it affect child, and if they are addicted to it, how do we get them off? Is it this? What is one of some of the processes? Couple of things that
yeah.
parents can learn about.
And that is a very good question. The hit. So what we have to realize, Kohila, is that Google and all of its competitors, they're in this to make money. They could care less about your digital dopamine addiction. So the more time that your child spends online, the more money they make. And they're making over $200. Google makes over $200 per person. And that includes people like me who aren't using it. Okay. Because of so the more that your child is addicted, the more money they put in their pocket. And there's not a lot of business ethics today. So
Mm.
what happens is that your brain now gets so conditioned that just a ping actually gives a little bit of release of dopamine. That
Mm.
just every time you scroll, every time somebody emails you,
Mm.
there's a little bit of an alert thing that goes on in your brain, and you get a little bit of a dose. And then if you get a like on Facebook or TikTok or whatever, then you get a big hit of dopamine. Then you go on more often. And then let's say somebody does cyberbullying with you, and you're so addicted to getting all of the pats on the back, and now you're not getting it. And then we have young children committing suicide because they are
Mm.
so we are not teaching resilience. We're not, people don't have the grit. to suffer through some of those things, or to survive them, I should say, not suffer through, but survive it. But so yeah, and just having it in your room, all of that, just parents have to just time out. You allow so much time a day, you know what they're checking,
Mm-hmm.
and just take charge and control. Nutrition has a lot to do with it too. I think we forget a lot about,
Yeah.
nutrition. And it's the same thing with nutrition. In one of my books, I think it's, is it Winning? How Winners Think What Champions Do. I interviewed this couple back in Wisconsin. He blew the whistle on, oh, was it General Mills? But Quaker, I think, was one of them, where they just throw additives like Oreo cookies so that you eat more crap. And then we wonder why almost 50% of our kids are obese, because we're putting things in to encourage it. So that's why parents have to be aware. They have to teach their child. And, exercise. What you have to do as a parent is give them alternatives. Give them healthy alternatives of dopamine. I mean, you saw me. I talked in the middle of my talk. I just stopped and said, "Oh my God, I'm flooded with dopamine." When I step on the stage, if you have a job that you love, you're so flooded with dopamine. You're not really a
Mm-hmm.
workaholic. You just get high on your mission and your calling in life that you don't want to stop it. But if your calling in life is only to, check out TikTok, then our society is at risk again. So you've got to give your kids not only give them healthy alternatives, but insist on it. Get them outside. Exercise is a great way to get dopamine. Nature. I see kids. I'm on one of the most beautiful spots on a 525-mile lake, and I will see kids come here, and instead of, you hear the symphony of the birds. It's nature at its best. They don't look up. They'll sit at the end of the dock looking at this. I see couples there. It's called a couples getaway. I see couples at the end of the dock. They never talk to each other. I can see at night they both have their little phones on. What does that do for a relationship? So I think it is structuring things in your child's life where they do have those alternatives. And the other thing is sleep.
Yep.
Sleep gives dopamine. But what we're
Mm-hmm.
finding out is that there are too many parents that don't know that their kids are up till 3, 4 in the morning. And then
Mm-hmm.
you wonder why you can't get them out of bed in the morning. But
Yep.
you know what? I was a single parent. It's hard. I was working more than full time. When you're in private
Mm-hmm.
practice, you don't have any end. It's hard. But I think I was a good teacher. We've got to teach it, because every time I hear about, the fentanyl overdoses,
Yep.
because drugs are laced with it, and kids that are 8, 9, 10,
Mm.
is that, yeah, we can't be with our kids at all times. And I'm just wondering, why are their parents not teaching them this? I cannot believe it's up over 1,000%.
Mm.
The fentanyl
Yep. I
laced.
had a friend lost her son too. Yeah.
Really? And one of my speaker friends, Laura Stagg, and these are cool kids.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
they're thriving kids. They have goals. They have ambitions. They would contribute to the world.
Yep.
But kids are curious.
Yep.
And so you have to teach your child that this is how your brain works and that you are curious. But then what you have to do is channel that energy, channel that curiosity in constructive, creative activities. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And also, we don't know much about. I mean, as parents, some of us don't even know what's out there. The kids find out before you find out, right?
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
So like I had my son is 16, same thing. Like I have to be careful with what he's watching, what he's looking at, because he could download, upload anything he wants, right? So that's
Yep.
another thing that, as you I think you earlier mentioned, that supervise them at a younger age to set healthy boundaries and talk about stuff that are on the online that are not good for them as well, right? And not
Mhm.
everything is good for you. You can't just go in and watch whatever you want. So there's a lot of education. I know parents are struggling because it is a new change. Their parents didn't have this. This is a new way of addressing parenting and then
You know
teaching
what
them
else
life
I think it
skills.
goes back to?
Yeah.
The other thing I think it goes back to is, do you remember you were probably growing up about that time where everybody got a trophy? Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Everybody got a trophy. And so what happened is, we took away challenge. And in my book, Winning, How Winners Think What Champions Do, I was looking for the common denominator of people who climb bigger mountains. And half the people I interviewed in the book, some of them, well, were their household names, like Jack Canfield
Mm.
and Chicken Soup for the Soul. And he grew up just up the road from me in West Virginia. I'm in North Carolina. And you know how he got to Harvard? I mean, I don't know if you know much about West Virginia, but it's not like Boston, Massachusetts. It's not one of the areas that have the highest education IQs and stuff. I love
Mm.
it. It's one of the best kept secret. So, but anyway, Harvard, had their quota, and they had to have one from every state or something. So that's how Jack said he got into Harvard, because even though he's a white male, he qualified for that. But the bottom line is, so I took people that I remember an African American guy. He's now a motivational speaker. He's doing very well. When he was 13 years old, he packed the only suitcase he had, and it was a paper bag, a brown paper bag. He saved $13 to take a taxi to live with grandma. I think his parents were on drugs. And he had enough critical thinking skills that said, I need to get out of this toxic environment. He's doing well. His brother is in jail. And so what I learned from people that I interviewed, that um, people who struggled are the most successful in life.
Mm.
And I think that's the other problem we have, are the lawnmower, what are they called? More parents and the helicopter
Helicopter.
parents. And
Mm.
yeah, that we have to be aware of what our child is doing, and structure things and give that kind of protection, but give them challenge within those boundaries. Don't just hand them the reward for existing.
Yep.
And so one of the ways that we get dopamine is by achievement. And I
Mm.
don't care if it's running a relay race, if it's winning a chess game, getting your kids involved in activities, debate, whatever their talent is. Don't shove them into something they don't want. I'm big on music. So I had a son that probably wasn't, one that was big on it, one that isn't. So, but the band experience, the music, the camaraderie. So he played drums. To me, that's more like a toy. Love your drummers, but to me, it's more like, but it worked. So what
Mm.
you do is you set a structure with boundaries, but within them, you get a sense of choice, so that there's that internal drive and motivation.
Yeah.
But kids need to get hooked on succeeding at something that they worked
Mm.
hard for, that they were challenged by. I may have said this once before. This is in the book Winning too. I'm giving a lot of examples, and I gave it in this talk again. I guess it's one of my favorite examples. Is where Eric Weinmeier, the blind guy, he
Mm.
climbs Mount Everest, and everybody said, "Why would you do that? Why would you go through all that heartache and struggle and challenge? You're blind. You couldn't see the view. You got there
Mm.
when you got to the top anyhow." And he said, "It's not about the view. It's about the process of becoming more of whom you ever thought you possibly could be." That's what life is about. And when you have those challenges, you take on a bit more.
Mm.
That is the ultimate dopamine addiction. And it's a healthy one. And it's how we contribute to society.
Absolutely. So, does anyone ever say that, well, this is the way of living now? Like, we are in a, AI is here, technology is here. Now we're talking like, we're going backward. Like, how do we, like, does anyone come at you that way? Is it, have you heard
Yeah.
of? Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? And to me, it's just a bunch of crap. It really is. I don't care what everybody else is doing, because I just told you that in many ways society is going down the tube. Our intelligence is going down. So we have changed, Kohila, our social norm. So just because everybody's doing it doesn't make it okay. Let me give you an example. I lived in Wisconsin. Love Wisconsin, a beautiful state in July. You don't want to be there in January. And great people, great place to grow up. But they drink a lot there. I think 8 or 9 of the top booze cities are in Wisconsin. And I remember counseling people, and I couldn't convince them they were alcoholics. You don't even probably know this, but there were cases of beer. There were 24 bottles in a case. I'm not talking 6-pack, 12-pack. I'm talking 12. And a guy would drink a whole case in a day or
Mm,
two. And I couldn't convince him he had a drinking problem. Why? Because everybody else was doing it.
mm,
And so we use that. It's okay. And that's why people will say that your income will be probably about the average of the 5 people you hang out with, right? And so we have this social norm of what is average, and we think that's a norm and it's okay. But if the norm is going down the tubes, do you really want to be going down the tubes? You want to rise above it. And
mm.
so if somebody else's kids are up till 4 in the morning on the phone and their parents are letting them do it and their parents don't have any restrictions, well, just be a better parent than theirs,
Yes,
because we got to start
absolutely.
raising the bar again. We do. And we've lowered it with everything. I mean, I'm telling you, I learned a lot from my guest here, but it's pretty scary to me. And I'm not going to mention any names, but there are hospitals here that have lowered the bar. They don't do drug testing anymore. Why? Because well, there it was because of certain races were getting eliminated because of it. No, you got to keep the bar up. I don't care if you're black, white, purple, blue. You cannot be on drugs and be doing surgery. And
Mm.
so we keep lowering the bar, and we're becoming a society of mediocrity. I find that's a problem. If you don't, we'll
Thank you
talk.
for saying that. Yes.
Really?
I said thank you for saying that. It's absolutely true. It doesn't matter what others are doing. You got to do what's right for your family and your kids, and that is important. And because it's so new, we all have to move with cautions, right? Because it's
Exactly.
new.
Exactly. Because we haven't thought this through. We
Yep.
have not. I mean, we see it on the news every night where people are imitating their grandson's voice, and people like my age are getting called
Yeah.
and said, send me 3,000 or they're going to
Yeah.
execute me or something. And the grandma sends it, not having any clue about what AI can duplicate. So we do, and we have to have more controls in place, I think. But how do you control it?
Yep.
It is hard
It's
to
hard.
control.
It's hard.
So that goes back to the job of parenting again. And God bless the parents, because it's harder today. Yep.
And if like for me, one of the best thing as parents can do is have meaningful conversations. Have a lot of parents are not having them, those the meaningful meaning, like you said, in the car. Those are valuable times for you to have skills. Talk about skills, talk about what's happening in the world, talk about why something you're telling your child not to do, right? Tell
Yeah.
them why you're telling them not to do that, not just say it as it's my rule, don't do it, but tell them. So I find conversations are the key to everything. I mean, there's not a better way to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you want your child to be comfortable coming to you,
Yes.
because one of my books is on bullying. And it amazed me how many kids I interviewed, and they didn't go to their parents. They didn't feel comfortable enough going to their own parents. And, if they take their life, that could have. I just spoke at a funeral a couple weeks ago. This guy
Mm.
had the happiest marriage ever. It was the second one, I think, for both of them.
Mm.
But he was a vet, and the PTSD, there was a moment. The brain can do tricks on us.
Yeah.
I think he felt he was a burden,
Mm.
and that he had to get out of the way because he loved his wife so much. He felt, if I'm going to be, and if he had only talked to me, talked to her, everybody in that chapel that day would have helped him. But he didn't reach out. And so what we have to do is teach our children, I
Open
am here
conversation.
for you. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Because
And
they,
when
they
they do talk to and listen, right? Parents sometimes have hard time listening to their kids. We try to interrupt and we try to say our own little words and phrases in there, but listening is another skill for parents that,
you know,
I'm
and
learning.
You
I'm
know,
learning.
and I'm glad you're bringing that up, because I see too many parents, because I do family counseling, And I see parents where they just lecture to a child and the child is just tuning them out, rolling their eyes. Stop. And so what we need to do is stop lecturing and ask more questions. Invite them into the conversation. And you know what I do if a child is just kind of blocking you and not opening up? I studied with J.L. Moreno, the father of psychodrama, Kohila. I may have mentioned
Mm,
that to you. And I really, it's one of the better techniques, that and hypnosis, that I've ever learned, and NLP. But anyway, you become one with them. And
mm.
so if somebody is just sitting there and they're not opening up, then I say, it's almost like I do um, a
Mirroring.
virtual role reversal. And I will say, you know what? If I were 12 years old, and I guess if I were living in a world where this is happening and I don't know what I'm going to get on this, and, and if friends are shunning me on TikTok, I would be overwhelmed. I honestly don't. To tell you the truth, I think I'd be at a loss of what to do. What I find is that if I become that child and express what they might be thinking and feeling, it's almost like taking the plug out of the dam. It opens them up. So you have done the expressing, but it's almost like a psychodrama. There's a catharsis. And
Mm,
and I'll tell you what happens then is that they feel like you understand them. When
yes.
children feel that they are understood, they then begin to trust you and they will
Mhm.
then open up. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes. That's what needs to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love it. Reverse role play with them and open up.
Yes. And you know what? As long as we're talking about communication, because that's probably at the core of all this. And I
All
see
of us.
less. You know what? There's another thing. I'm taking notes as I keep getting ideas. I always love my interviews with you. Uh, the other is to reframe it. So
Mm-hmm.
and you know what reframing is. I remember
Yes.
that I had an obstinate um, teenager, and uh, he said something. It's my parents. They're on me all the time. They want to know what I'm doing, what I'm this. And I stood behind him, kind of like an alter ego, and I said, it's got to be tough. So now I'm aligning with him. I know how he feels. It's got to feel tough to
Mm-hmm.
have parents who love you so much. Do you see what I slipped in there? I
Mm-hmm.
aligned with him. I know how he feels, but I changed his perception that his parents aren't the ugly goat anymore. They're parents who love him so much that they want to be involved in his life. And I get breakthroughs. And let me tell you one other thing. And I honestly am glad I grew up when I did, because we did have, I think, the kind of civility that I'd like to see come back. But
Mm-hmm.
my parents were very busy. They had a car dealership. They worked 12, 14, 16 hours a day. I never felt neglected because the moments we had together were very meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
So quality of time is important. And you know where we had that quality of time? The dealership was right next to the house. We had all our meals together. Maybe not breakfast.
Dinner for sure. At least one of them.
Exactly. And it
Mm-hmm.
was almost, oh, I'm getting goosebumps. It was like a cardinal sin. I was a cheerleader. You didn't have cheerleading practice until at least 7 o'clock. You didn't have
Yes.
soccer practice at 5:30 when people might be eating. It was almost like, churches maybe at Sunday morning or synagogue is Friday night.
Yes.
There was a time span where society respected. That's family time. Kohila, you're not going to probably believe this. I don't know if you know this, but when I was growing up, stores weren't open on Sundays. A few,
Yes.
a few gas stations were. So if you were going to make a long trip, you fill up your tank and you kind of plot out that once you got to Milwaukee or something, you could fill up. It was almost anti whatever, family,
Spend
religion. Yes,
spend
it
time
was
with family.
exactly. And after church, we would load in the car and go see my aunts and uncles. And I'm closer to my cousins than most people are to their siblings.
Mm.
So there's just so many people to reach out to help you. But let's bring back the family dining time.
Mhm.
I just agree. We would laugh. And I always say it's not only the family that prays together stays together, the family that plays together stays
Together
together.
stays together. Eat together stays together.
Exactly. So play together. What do you do for fun with your kids? I don't see, we'd go outside. My dad would play, and they were busy, 14,
Mhm.
16 hours, but we'd hit the ball together. Are you doing that with your kids?
Yep. Yep. It's so important to ask that question. Yes. Love it.
So those are the things I think that we need to change, and
Yep.
looking at, again, the healthy alternatives. Because again, I just want to emphasize that dopamine is not bad. It's great. I mean, that's why I plan to work strong till I'm 100, because I get
Mhm.
high on making a difference in the world and
Love your
having,
energy. Love your
yeah,
energy.
yeah,
I can see the passion, and I love the topic, and I want to bring you back again to talk more about it, because there's so many parts to it, right? But
there
today your message is very clear that, it doesn't matter what you do with your kids, you have to have family time. I think that's easy to do. Easy
exactly,
to do. And
yeah,
it's a quick fix.
be there for them. And
Mhm.
it'll change the way the world thinks, one child at a time. So, it's always a pleasure being with you. And for those of you who want to see the TEDx talk, I
I'm
can
gonna
send
put it in
you,
my. I'll
yeah,
put it in the show notes
will
so
you?
they have it. Yeah,
And
and then
that,
when it
and
becomes the newer one, you give it to me, and then I'll change it because I'll give
yeah,
you.
or they can even look at the TED platform and it'll be up then. But I want everybody, and then share it, because I think, together, Kohila, together we can make a difference, raise the norm
Absolutely.
to where civility and humanity, we're human. We're human becomes part of humanity again.
Mhm. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you
Love
for
it.
being here. Love it. Just going to close off here. Thank you for tuning into our show. I hope you got so much value from what Edie has to say about dopamine and the AI. And I'm going to bring her back because I know she's got so much to offer us. So until next time, we'll see you on Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Again, if you're interested in making learning easy for your child, please book a call at learningsuccessacademy.com. Until next time, see what's on the other side of fear and make sure you have at least one meal with your family all
Yes.
together and have some playtime too because it's so easy to do. And I can be like that too, where I kind of say I'm busy, but I am mindful to make it that we eat together once a day and we do something every week. We have to do that together. So thank you, Edie, for being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.